Hi everybody, this is Bonnie with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I want to show you how to make my Broomstick Summer top. This is a shorter waisted top, although you can always adjust that, and it's also a looser fitting top, so it's not form fit, and this is made out of a particular yarn that I'm going to show you in just a minute that's going to be ideal for the summer for breathability. Now, it might look a little bit complicated as you see the broomstick stitch, and I wanted to let you know that that is made incredibly easy using the set of 25 millimeter or size 50 knitting needles, and these are circular knitting needles, and I have found this to completely simplify the process of working broomstick in the round. Even if you're a confident beginner, I don't want you to be intimidated by this technique. I do have a couple of videos in the video description of my other broomstick videos, and you can look at how these stitches are formed, and I think you'll find that it's very beginner friendly. Again, confident beginner friendly. Well, let me go ahead and show you what you're going to need. I'm going to be using this yarn from Knits and Purls, which has 50% Merino Eco Wool and 50% Organic Hemp. Each of these are 240 meters or 262 yards or 100 grams. This is a DK or number 3 weight yarn. And let me go ahead and tell you the colors. This color is called gold. This, which is kind of hard to see against this backdrop, is called gray. And the one over here is called aqua. I'm also recommending that you have a size H or 8 or 5.00 millimeter crochet hook, or whichever hook you're going to need to make gauge. And you're going to find all that information in the written pattern. And you'll also need a yarn needle and a pair of sharp scissors. I also recommend that you have a stitch marker or two handy, as well as a measuring tape. I'm also recommending that you have a pair of circular knitting needles. These are size 50 or 25.0 millimeters. I do have a link in the video description for where you can purchase these on Amazon, or you can use the straight needles, but it's a little trickier to use working the broomstick in the round, so I'm recommending that you have something like this if possible. I just wanted to say a word or two about the numbers I'm going to be giving you and the size. I'm going to be crocheting a large size summer sweater, and if you need to make it either smaller or larger, I'm going to encourage you to take a look at the written pattern, and you'll be able to locate that by looking in the video description. I'll have a link where you can purchase that either from my Lovecraft store or my Etsy online store. And the reason I do that is when you have many different sizes in a project like this, it becomes very confusing very, very quickly in giving information for the various sizings. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using the aqua color as I start working on the yoke. To begin, we're going to work a slip knot and a starting chain of 112 chains. Now, if you're not making a large size and making a different size, be sure to check the written pattern so that you know what the difference in the number of chains will be. After crocheting 112 chains, I'm going to be careful not to twist the chain as I locate that very first chain worked. Make sure that the right side is facing here, and then I'm going to join with a slip stitch, just like that, to that very first chain. Slip, stitch. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet in that stitch as well. And I'm going to crochet in each chain all the way around I'm just working in the side of the chain. I'm going to be working on the other side eventually, so the entire chain will be covered up, just in case you were tempted to use a different style. So I'm going to go ahead and work this, and I should have 112 single crochets at the end of this round. Now that I've worked this all the way around, I'm going to verify that the chain is not twisted, and I have verified that. And now I'm going to join with a slip stitch, just like that, to the very first stitch of the round. Okay, so now we're going to chain one. So after joining, and I've chained one, we're going to work what we call a low front ridge. And what we're going to do is we're going to work only in the front loop of each single crochet around. Now notice I have not turned yet. I will tell you when we're going to do that, but it's not going to be for a couple more rounds. Okay, so for this low front ridge, we're going to start working in the very first stitch, and we just work slip, stitch in that first loop, or front loop only, slip, stitch, just like that. I'll try to do it a little more slowly. Just like that. Make sure you don't work this too tightly. Just use your normal tension as you work this around. Now after we do this, I will show you the next round, and where we're going to come back around and we're going to work in that remaining loop. This is just going to create a little bit of a decorative ridge to help define the beautiful broomstick that we're going to work in just a bit. So go ahead and work this all the way around. At the end of this low front ridge round, I'm going to join with a slip stitch right there to that first slip stitch. Let's go ahead and chain one. Now we're not going to turn, we're going to just continue onward. We're going to look behind the stitches, and this is the stitch or the strand, which is the back loop that remains. So we're going to work in the back loop. So I'm going to work several of these with you, okay, so that you see where this loop is. And it's really easy for the eyes to get tricked, and if you need to just stop a second, find where that slip stitch is, and it should be right behind that slip stitch. Okay, so you see the slip stitch, and it's right behind it, right there. Another way you can find this strand is if you look at the back, and you see where the extra loop is right here on each of these single crochets. I'm not trying to purposely make this hard on you, I promise. I just really like the way this ridge helps to frame what we're going to do after this round. So go ahead and work these single crochets in the back loop all the way around. At the end of the round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet of the round. Now the join may look a little disjunct or a little different, but don't worry about this too much because that's going to be at the back of the neck and will be in a place where it won't be seen. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have. You see this little ledge here, this little ridge, and I think this is just going to be very nice to help frame what we're going to do. And again, we're going to be working another round over the remainder of the chain during the finishing part of this video. Okay, now we're going to bring out the big sticks here. We're going to bring out our pair of circular knitting needles. We're not going to need the other side, but since these usually come in pairs, that's what we're going to be using. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, so to begin this round, let's go ahead and make a small chain and a tug, just so that our work there is secure. And we're going to make a loop, and we put it onto the stick just like this, or onto the knitting needle. Okay, now this can be a little bit tricky, but I think using the smaller knitting needle, or the smaller as far as distance, because the other ones are like 2 or 3 times as long as this, and harder to hold in the hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw up a loop from every stitch. This single crochet already has the loop we just put on. We're going to work the opposite direction. If you're a right-hander, you're going to work from left to right. If you're a left-hander, it's going to be right to left. Okay, so we're going to insert our hook, working under both loops, wrap, pull up a loop, and then stick it on to the needle. We're going to do this in all 112 stitches. Okay, I'll go more slowly. Stick your hook in under the next 2 loops, or 2 threads, or the top of the V. Pull up a loop and pull that onto the stick. You want your tension to be such that it can move back and forth, but you don't want them to be really sloppy as you're putting these on. Okay, let's do several more. Okay, so you see how that goes. Eventually they're gonna work their way off the stick, and then we'll go on to this cord here. So as you're working your way around, I encourage you to try to do this particular round and the one that follows in one sitting, rather than do it halfway and then drop it in your craft bag to pick up later, especially once these loops start to go off of the needle and then onto the cord. They'll be fine, okay, as long as you're doing that, but you're not going to want to be jostling it around a lot. You want to try to make these as even as possible. And there is a lot of grace in this once we start working the stitches in it. I promise you, you'll see that. But you just try to do this in one sitting if you can. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and work this. And like I said, these are eventually going to, as I add more and more, these are going to slip off and go onto the cord. And that's fine. And don't worry about that. Okay. And they will be fine. So I'll go ahead and finish this, and then I'll show you where to go from there. All right, I've worked this all the way around. You can see how the yarn does retain its shape, especially with this Merino Hemp combo. I think the stiffness, which by the way, I am told, and I have experienced this, the stiffness of the material that you feel right now is going to soften with each wash. Okay, and it's going to be a very breathable fabric. But let me show you that I worked all the way around, and you can see where I pulled the loop. Here we go, up in this stitch, and then I just made the last one here. Now we're going to do something a little bit scary. Okay, I'm going to start pulling these off. There are 2 ways you can take these off 4 at a time, or you can just take a bunch of them off the needle, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, because I think it makes it much easier to work. I just don't want you to fear losing any of these loops. But again, don't pull at any of these individually. Just leave them be the way they are. And for this next round, we're going to work from right to left. We're back to working in the normal direction. And I think you're going to see that this is really fun, and dare I even use the word easy stitch to accomplish. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to scoot these back on the stick here in order to take them off. So this may be a little bit tricky. You know that this is the one we started with first, so we're not going to be working that one. So I'm just going to try to pry these off a bit. Okay, till I get several. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so we're going to start back here, and we're going to take 4 loops. Let's get the yarn. Very carefully, make sure you don't pull on this yarn thread. All right, so this does look like a mess, but don't worry, it's going to straighten out real fast. Get 4 loops, just like that. Now to start this, yarn over, pull it through, and give it a chain. You're just going to have to do that for the first one. Now, even though we have 4 loops, we're going to simultaneously work in these broomstick stitches and work our increases at the same time. And the way we're going to do that is, instead of working 4 single crochets in each of these broomstick configurations, we're going to work 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Notice that I'm holding this with my hand as I work these. See how beautiful that looks already? Now we're going to take 4 more. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and we're going to just pull the yarn through like that. We've already got a loop, so we can finish that single crochet. 1, and let's do 4 more. Okay, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that's basically what we're going to do. The next 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and yarn over, pull through. That's 1 single crochet, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to pull this up a bit so I can work more of these loops off. You can even just work them all off at the same time, but I'm just gonna kind of do the mid-road thing and just do some of them. Okay, just kind of a handful at a time. Again, I'm working these back on so that I can work them off. Okay, that's a few more. And so we just continue the next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You notice how they retain their shape. Isn't that cool? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we're going to just keep on doing this. What's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So go ahead and do this all the way around, and I'll show you how this row ends. And then after this row, we're going to change colors temporarily and then return to this aqua color, and it's going to be really fun. I've worked this all the way around, so I'm going to work the last 4 with you, or the last 4 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, just doing single crochets worked in there. Now I'm going to join to that very first single crochet, which is right here. Make sure I get that first loop. There we go. The slip stitch. So now our stitch count has gone up by 28 stitches. So let's take a look at how this looks. Isn't this beautiful? And I really think this this yarn is really giving it a lot of stitch definition. I really, really, really like that. Okay, so I'm gonna actually back this out because I'm going to be switching yarn colors at the join. So let me go ahead and get the gray. Let me go ahead and give you a stitch count before I do that join with you again. So initially we had 112 single crochets back on the first, second, and third rows. which is 1, 2, 3. So we've increased by 28, so that brings us to 140 single crochets after having worked that last round. So let's go ahead and join with a slip stitch again. Still having trouble getting it in there. There we go. And since I'm changing yarn colors, I'm going to be using the, it says gray on the label. It looks more like a charcoal color as I'm working it. I know it's going to be a little tricky to see. Do not cut this yarn, because after this next round, we're actually going to return to this color, so we'll just be able to pull it up and join it. All right, so what are we going to do for this next round? So this would be round, let's see, 3, 4, 5. This will be round 6 already. We're just going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch around. Notice that we haven't turned at all. We still have the front side facing. So let's just go ahead and single crochet in each single crochet. And again, you should have a total of 140 stitches after this round. At the end of round 6, we're going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. Now we're going to work one more round in the black, so we're going to chain 1 and again just single crochet in each stitch around. Again, the stitch count will stay the same at 140 stitches. As we end round 7, we're going to make a slip stitch, but we're also going to change back to the aqua. So we're going to stick our hook in. I'm actually going to clip a nice generous, notice a nice generous strand here, about 6 inches or so. So we have a nice strand to hide the loose ends. And then the yarn that I said not to clip, but just to leave it because we're going to join it again. I'm going to join with a slip stitch. Chain 1. And one more time, we're going to work single crochets in each stitch all the way around. This would be for round number 8. Okay. At the end of 8 rounds, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round. And let's go ahead and take a look at our collar. As it's worn, it will be like this. Of course, we're crocheting it the opposite direction, but it will look like this. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat rows 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 again. Now let me talk about stitch counts as we go forward. Down here on row 4, we had 28 broomstick clusters. On this round, since we have 140 stitches, we're going to have 35 clusters. Now we're going to be adding stitches, 5 in each cluster. The last cluster, we're going to have 6 stitches in that. That's just to adjust for the multiples as we're going about. And that way, when we do the rounds following this, they'll all going to work out. Okay. Now, also, I just wanted to say, as you begin the repeats of rounds 4 through 8, just know that these broomsticks are not going to line up with the ones below it, and that's by design, since we are changing our multiples in order to expand the collar part. It's just not going to line up. I just don't want you to think that it needs to be lined up directly on top. It's not going to be, because we've added so many stitches in the round. Okay, so go ahead and work rounds 4 through 8, and if you need additional stitch support, look across the bottom of the screen And I'll put a time mark where round 4 begins. But just remember now, if you hear me call out numbers of rounds and whatnot, that the numbers are going to be different, just as I told you previously. All right, so go ahead and work the next 5 rounds. That would be round 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So just as a reminder for that last cluster, make sure that you're working 6 single crochets. Now, anywhere along here, if you found that you maybe miscounted on the loops and you have 1 extra at the end, it's not a problem. Just gather that in to the other 4 loops and just finish it off. The main thing that's important is that the stitch count with the single crochets and with the, after completing this round, you should have a total of 176 stitches. Again, that extra stitch was added here so that we will have 176. So I'm just going to continue on with repeating rounds 5, 6, and 7 with the single crochets. This is what you should have after completing 13 rounds. Now for rounds 14 through 18, they're going to be worked the same exact way, with the exception that you're going to have more stitches. Okay, so for round 14, we're going to work the broomstick again, loading these loops in this direction and then crocheting in the other direction. Once you complete pulling up all the loops for round 14, you should have 44 clusters. At the end of this round, you do not need to add any extra stitches in that last cluster like you did before. And after you work round 15, you should have 220 single crochets around. So let me show you how this is forming. So with each round, of course, you have additional stitches, and that is going to shape the way this top will expand. So go ahead and work rounds 14 through 18. If you need stitch support, again, look across the time mark at the bottom of the screen. This is what you should have after completing 18 rows. Now for row 19, it will be the same as what we did here with row 4. But row 20 is going to be different. That's the row where we work the single crochets over the loops. When we work the next row 20, working this, we're going to work it with only 4 single crochets in each loop. Let me say that one more time. When you work the next row of loops, and then the row that follows that, where you work the single crochets, this is working, from right to left for the right-handers or left to right for left-handers. Instead of working the 5 single crochets in each of the groupings, the clusters, we're only going to work 4. So we're not going to be increasing. Every time we worked the 5 stitch where there were 4 loops, we were working increases here. The next round, we don't want to work increases. We're going to maintain the same stitch count of 220 for the next section. So go ahead and work row 19, which is with pulling up the loops, 20, using only 4 single crochets in each grouping. And then row 21 with the black, 22 with the black or the gray. And again, all of these rows that we're adding should still be maintaining the 220 stitch count. This is what you should have after completing 22 rounds. So let's take a look at what we have. We should have a nice bodice. I'll pull this back a little bit so you can see. So that's what you should have. Now, what I'm going to recommend now may seem a little strange, but I'm going to recommend that you get a shirt or sweater that fits you well so that you can compare the next steps that we do with that. Now, if you even wanted to go ahead and try this on, you could go ahead and try it on just to make sure that it is going to fit the way you would prefer it to. So let me show you what I have gone ahead and done. I'm going to show you the join right back here at the end. Now, I did not actually join that yarn together because we're going to introduce the new color if you are working with 3 colors like I am. So I'm going to bring this color in. It's called golden, but it really looks more like a lime green to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to join. This is the last round, round 22. We're going to join with this yarn. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Go ahead and give it a chain. And I'm going to go ahead and trim the black yarn and just get it out of the way for now. It makes it easier. And I'm also going to trim the aqua because we're not going to be using it. All right, so now let's go ahead and try to define some parameters before we get started. So I'm going to turn this around, although it's upside down according to the way we are crocheting this, but it is right side up the way it's going to be worn. And so this is going to mark the back seam that's going to go straight down the back of the sweater. All right. Now what I've gone ahead and done, I'm going to count this with you. And again, check your written pattern, because if you're doing a different size other than large, this is going to vary. Okay, so this is right in between these 2 clusters. So we're going to count clusters right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so 7 clusters from the center to the left of the center. I went ahead and put a stitch marker, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I put another one here. Now this is going to define the back of the sweater. Alrighty, and now we're going to count for the sleeve openings. Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 cluster broomstick clusters, and then I place another stitch marker for the front. And then, okay, this is still the back here. But let's count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 clusters here on the other side for the other sleeve. And then I put a white or a different color stitch marker just to distinguish the front from the back. It just helps me. If you don't have to do it that way, but that's just the way I'm choosing to do it. So let's look at the front, and we're going to see the stitch markers here. So it's in between the clusters. So let's count the clusters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So these 17 clusters are going to make up the front of the sweater. And then I, again, placed a stitch marker. This is very important that you use the stitch markers to do this, because what we're going to do on this next round is we are going to begin working the bodice part, and in between this stitch marker and this stitch marker, we're going to put a chain that we'll work in the round after this. So we're going to call this Bodice Round 1, that we start with the new color. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work chains here, and then chains here in between these 2 stitch markers, and that will go under the arms. Okay, it's a very simple sweater construction that I like to use for these summer sweaters, but I love to wear them. They fit well. So now to start the first round of the bodice, we're going to work single crochets, and we're going to work in that same stitch as joining, or where the yarn was changed, and we're going to work in each stitch until you get to that very first stitch marker. So go ahead and do that. So I've worked in each single crochet, including the stitch marker. Now what I'm going to do is the underarm chain, which is a chain 28 for this size. So we're going to chain 28. Three 24 and 25, 26, 27, 28. Now what we're going to do is we're going to skip all of these stitches until you get to the next stitch marker, which is right here. So we're going to work in that single crochet. Okay, let's see if I can move this out of the way. So right here, so we work a single crochet in that stitch and in each of the other single crochets or stitches until you get to the next stitch marker. And let's just take a look. And so this is going to be the part that goes under the arm, and this will be, of course, on the top side of the arm. All right, so go ahead and work those single crochets. After crocheting across, I have completed 69 stitches from that last stitch marker until the current stitch marker, so 69 stitches across the front. And then we're going to work 28 chains again. That's 10, 15, it's 20, 25, and 28. And then we're going to skip until we get to the next stitch marker, which is right here. And we're going to join. And then we're going to work single crochets in each stitch until we get to the very beginning of the round. So go ahead and work until you get to the beginning. So I've crocheted 28 stitches on this other side, and we had again 29 over here. And let's go ahead and join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round. So let's take a look at what we have. We have the back, and we have the two stitch markers defining that, and this is one underarm in the sleeve here, another underarm in the sleeve, and this would be the front. All right, so we've actually done the hardest part of this sweater. So now it's a matter of finishing out the bodice, and I love to use a stitch. If you follow me for any length of time, you know I love the Wattle Stitch. It's a wonderful filler stitch. It can provide some really nice elasticity in tops as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain one, and in that first stitch, notice that we haven't turned yet. Okay, we're going to turn at the end of this round. This is going to be bodice round number 2. And so we're going to work a wattle stitch, which is a single crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. Now normally for the wattle stitches we would skip 2 stitches, but for this top we are only going to skip 1 stitch. So we're going to skip 1 single crochet, and then the next stitch we're going to work single crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Skip 1 stitch, and then we work a wattle stitch, which is again single crochet, chain 1, double crochet, worked into that same space. We don't skip 2 in this case because it would tend to pull the top, and we don't want to do that, especially since we're working around the bottom of a circle or of so we don't want to pull it too tightly. We want it to fit nice completely. So we're going to skip one again, single crochet, chain one, double crochet, and we're going to work this all the way around. So I'm going to work this until I get to the chain, and I'll show you how to work in the chain. And then once you do that, you'll be able to work around the rest of the top, and then I will simply show you the join at the end. So I'll go ahead and do this until the point where I get to the underarm chain. Now once we get to the chains, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to skip the next 2 chains, and then we're going to work a wattle stitch in the next one. Single crochet, chain 1, double crochet, skip 2 chains, 1, 2, and then we work the wattle stitch again in the next. Now when you approach this section, you may have ended on this stitch if you're using the numbers for a different size. In that case, just treat this stitch and the first chain as those first 2 stitches. Okay, so we're just looking for an even distribution of these wattle stitches. Okay, 1, 2, skip those 2, and then we work another one. This will all make sense once you've done a couple of rounds with this. Skip 2, and again, see how I'm working in 2 of those strands. I think that's just going to make it stronger. And skip 2, and do another wattle stitch. Make sure I skip 2. Yes, skip 2 stitches, and then another wattle stitch. There should be around let's see, 28 divided by 3. There should be a little under 10. 1, 2, should be around 9 of these. Skip 2. We'll verify this once we get to the end of the underarm section. Skip 2 stitches, and then there we go, single crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. Okay, let's just count the wattle stitches over these chains. So this one was actually built into this stitch, so let's start with this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, good guess. Now we're going to skip 1. That one looks like a chain, and that first single crochet, and then we go back to the wattle stitches in the single crochets, and then we only skip 1 stitch in between. All right, so I know that may be a little bit confusing, but just you're skipping 2 stitches only when you're over that chain. Otherwise, we're just skipping 1 stitch again, because we have that curve that we are working on, and we don't want this to be pulled too tightly. So go ahead and continue working these wattle stitches all the way across the front, and when you get to the next chain, remember we're going to be skipping 2 chains in between the wattle stitches here, and then when we return back to the single crochets, we're just skipping 1 stitch. So go ahead and finish this round. All right, we're about to connect this, and we're just going to join it to the single crochet, the top of that single crochet with a slip stitch. Now we're going to turn everything for the very first time. This is for round 3 of the bodice. We're going to chain 2, and this is the way the next let's see, 6 rows will be worked. We're going to work a single crochet, chain 1, a double crochet, worked into that chain 1 space of the wattle stitch, and you'll find this after a while your muscle memory falls right into place with this. But for now, you might have a little bit of hard time. Just make sure you find that open space, that chain 1 space, and we just work a wattle stitch in each of those stitches all the way around. Now let me go ahead and pause and give you some numbers for at the end of round 2. So now across the back, You're going to have 29 wattle stitches for this size. You'll have 9 under each of the arms and 34 across the front of the sweater. All right, so go ahead and work. Go ahead and go back to working these wattle stitches in the chain 1 spaces all the way around. At the end of round 3, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that chain 2 at the beginning of the round. Let's go ahead and move that out of the way. And I need to let you know that we have a total of 81 wattle stitches in the round. So now we are going to do a lot of working. We're going to go ahead, chain 2, turn for, this would be round number 4. So we're going to work rounds 4, 5, and 6. And we're just going to work them the same way, just working in the chain 1 space of those wattle stitches. We work wattle stitches. All right. So go ahead and work those next 3 rounds, rounds 4, 5, and 6. Make sure that you join at the chain 2 at the end of each round and turn your work at the end of each of these rounds as well. This is what you should have after 6 rounds of the bodice section. Now I'm going to join with a slip stitch, but I'm also going to change the color back to that gray, which really looks like black. Gonna go ahead and join, and all right, so we're just going to do a chain 2, and don't forget to turn at the end of these rounds for the bodice at least. All right, so we're going to just work the wattle stitch, single crochet, chain 1, double crochet in each wattle stitch all the way around. And so let's go ahead and look at this from the front. So we're going to have a round of the gray, okay, for round 7. And so what I'm going to do is I am just going to continue this. I'm going to change back to the golden color, which looks like it's green, but anyway, I'm using the proper names that were given by the manufacturers. But we're going to return to this color, and then we're going to repeat rounds. Let me go ahead and look at it this way. It's easier to see. Rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that's a 6-round repeat. 5 rounds with the green color here, and then 1 round with the gray black color. So that's what I'm going to continue for my stripe pattern. Now, if you want to do a different stripe pattern, that's completely up to you. But that's the one that I am going to do. So I'm going to repeat this until the top is the length that I desire. If you look across the bottom of the screen, I'll tell you exactly how many of these stripes that I will be making. All right, so go ahead and work that continually until you get the top to the size that you desire. Since we are turning at the end of each of these rounds, it might be easiest to just fasten off when changing the yarn colors for these stripes. Okay, so I'm going to be fastening off at the end of the color change, and that will be the 5 rows. And then I'm going to return to the black, but I just wanted to give you a little preview of how this is coming along. Okay, so now I'm going to return to the black, and I'm going to join it at the same place. Okay, so that we keep that to the back of the sweater. Let's go ahead and take a look at the front. Now, if you haven't already, I mean, hopefully you've gone ahead and tried this on when we were way back here. But if you haven't yet, I would go ahead and compare this to a shirt that fits you well, or go ahead and just try this on just to see if you are liking the fit that you're getting. If you're not, it's not too late to pull it out. And let me tell you how you can adjust the size. If the size is too small, you can go back. I know it would involve a little bit of taking some stitches out, but go back, and what you're going to want to do is add stitches in the chain for that first round of the bodice, okay? And whatever you do on one side, do it on the other. If it's too large, then you're going to want to take out some of the chains, and you can determine how many by, again, trying it on and giving it a good estimate. It really doesn't matter how many chains that you have here, because it's just not as big a deal because the wattle stitch, the way we are working it in this project. Okay, but just make sure whatever you do on one side, you do on the other. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on. All right, let me show you what I have done. I have completed a total of 6 of the green or gold stripes, and I did finish with an additional round using the gray. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to transition to working a short ribbing along the bottom of the top. This is optional. If you don't want to add ribbing, you can stop at this point. Now if you want your top to be a little bit longer, and if you have additional yarn, you can extend this to make it a longer top, but I'm going to have mine be on the shorter side. Okay, so let me show you how to transition to the ribbing. All right, so this, we do have some strands to work around here that will be hidden later. So I've gone ahead and I've joined to the chain 2. So I'm going to actually chain 2, and then I'm going to turn my work again. After that chain 2, we're going to work in the wattle stitches. We're going to work 1 double crochet in the chain 1 space, and then 1 in the single crochet. So this is, again, 1 double crochet in the chain 1 space, and then 1 in the single crochet. So go ahead and work this all the way around. At the end of this round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that first double crochet. We're going to chain 2, and now we're going to begin the ribbing round, and we work that by working a front post double crochet followed by a back post double crochet, and we're just going to alternate that around front post double crochet and then a back post. So go ahead and work that all the way around. At the end of the round, let's join with a slip stitch to the top of that first stitch and give it a chain and a tug, and make sure that you trim a nice long strand so that you can hide that into your work using your yarn needle. Now I'm going to work an optional round. You can skip this if you just prefer to leave the top the way it is, but I'm going to join with a slip stitch. I have the front side facing of the top, and I'm going to join with the chain and a single crochet worked into that same place. And also I have gone 1 needle size smaller. Okay, so I've changed my H hook for a G hook, or the 4.00 millimeter crochet hook. Do want to make a note that in European and English sizes, sometimes this is called an F, but I always look at the millimeters. So this is a 4.00 millimeter crochet hook, and I am just going to work. I'm working in to the remaining loop of that original chain, and I'm just going to work a single crochet all the way around. Just 1 stitch in each of the remaining loops, or from the original foundation chain. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work that round. At the end of this collar round, I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch of the round, and I'm going to chain one and do a final round around the collar, and we're just going to work single crochets in each stitch all the way around. And at the end of this round, I'm going to join with the slip stitch just like I did here, and I'm going to fasten off and hide all my loose strands. So go ahead and finish that off. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching the video of how to make my broomstick summer top. If you did, I'd certainly love to hear from you. Please feel free to comment in the comment section below. God bless. Bye-bye.